Wait, what about this part?
Shh. Welcome to TBR, a podcast where two besties read. I'm Addi.
And I'm Alex, and join us as we reread,
review,
and reevaluate our favorite books over the years.
Shh, I'm reading.
This week on TBR, we're covering the second half of part 2 of Lockwood & Co.'s second book, The Whispering Skull by Jonathan Stroud, chapters 5 through 8. Hello, and welcome to another episode of TBR, or Two Besties Read. My name is Addi, and I'm joined by the bestest co-host on this side of North America, Alex.
You flatter me.
All right, what do you got over there? Where's the Diet Coke in sight?
No, I'm drinking water today, to the surprise of everyone.
Whoa, hydrate or dihydrate.
Yeah, a little midday water treat. What are you drinking?
I have coffee. I'm trying to stay alive, awake, alert, enthusiastic.
Today we get caffeinated, so that's good.
So this episode may be a bit,
At least on your end for sure.
Yeah, you're like, I will not be matching that energy.
I was like, I'm not at that level yet.
I feel like this is how our friendship is, though, is I'm like the Chihuahua dog, and you're the Golden Retriever, where you have some energy, but you're just happy to be there.
Yeah, yes, that is fair.
Although I try to achieve Golden Retriever energy. I don't know what kind of dog you try to have the energy of. If you feel like you're a Golden Retriever also.
No, I feel like Golden Retrievers are pretty nice, and sometimes I am not. I just took, I'll send it to you, the BuzzFeed Harry Potter quiz where it splits you up into your houses, like percentage-wise, instead of the Pottermore one, because on the Pottermore one, I got straight Gryffindor no matter how many times and how many emails I made.
What? You're Gryffindor?
Yeah, I don't fucking believe it. I think it's false.
Yo, I believe it. What do you think you are?
I would say Ravenclaw. Not to toot my own horn, but I feel pretty smart.
I say yes so you could join me, but
yeah.
like...
Different houses, it's fine. I got 35% Gryffindor, and then Ravenclaw, and then Hufflepuff, and then Slytherin. But literally everyone thought that Slytherin was going to be my main house. I was like, excuse me? Excuse me?
I mean, honestly...
I don't know, because people multiple people, because old roommate, she described me as witty and devious. And I was like, devious? What the fuck is that kind of descriptor? And I was like, okay, obviously that's just like a one-off, right? Like, that's just certain people see you certain ways, okay? Devious. And then my teacher described me as being devious. And I was like, oh, what? So maybe this is like a personality trait I have where I'm just devious and like thinking things. I was like, holy shit.
Okay, but you're not devious in like the evil aspect.
I hope not.
You're devious in like a Lucy way, if we're comparing it to the Lockwood & Co.
I don't know. I feel like, especially at work, I can be really mean and I have mean thoughts about people because I'm a judgy person. But at work, I try to temper it back. I try to be nice. I say hello to everyone in the morning. I ask them personal questions. So maybe that's just leaking through that they all thought that I'd be Slytherin as my main. I was like, oh no. I thought I was doing really good.
You're not devious in a negative sense, but ornery. For example, if someone was to really piss you off, you wouldn't like tell them to your face. You do something sly to annoy them.
Oh, yeah.
Ever so slightly leave it and be like, you know? Like, that's what I think devious. And it's funny because I'm like, oh yeah, Alex would do this. But like, that's also my level too. So
yeah, I'm going to send it to you after this and I want you to take it and send me your screenshot because I am intrigued to see what levels you are.
I think I've taken the Pottermore quiz like at least 5 or 6 times, and every single time I've gotten Ravenclaw. I want to redo on my Patronus.
Oh my god. Okay, I took the Patronus quiz. First of all, I didn't know it was timed. When it's like, think of a happy memory. I close my eyes. The first question is close your eyes and think of a happy memory. I took too long to think of a happy memory, and then I missed like 2 questions.
What?
So I got a dolphin as my thing, and I was like, that's slander. Not correct. And then I retook it using another fake email that I made to retake it, because you have to, like, come up with these new emails to even redo it, obviously. And I got a weasel.
It goes with the deviousness.
Fucking rude. Yeah. Basically, you know, like, small rodent. Rude.
Not a ferret?
No, probably not a ferret, but that would have been very much on the Draco train.
Okay. So this week on TBR, we are covering the second half of Part 2, The Unexpected Grave, which is chapters 5 through 8. Now, what book do you really want made into a movie or TV show? We've talked about Harry Potter, and now we're talking about Lockwood & Co. What other books would you want to see on the big screen?
The Selection series would be perfect for a TV show.
Yes! That
that is what I want.
Honestly, yeah, 100%. Someone get on it. I want it.
Because it's already set up for a TV show, and it'd be like reality. It's basically The Bachelor, but finding a new queen. Ugh.
I mean, I don't watch The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, personally. Not my vibe. But, like, everyone loves those shows, and I think it would really thrive in that setting if you set up the selection series like a mini-series where it was just 3 seasons, each season is the book, each week is one character getting, well, I'm not going to spoil it. Man, it would be so good. Ah.
It would be so good. Do you have any other ones you would want to be made into media adaptations?
Oh, you know, I read this question last night. I had time to prepare, and I still am not ready.
That's fair enough.
Well, I will say I'm excited for Percy Jackson to be adapted.
Yes, I am excited.
Even though I haven't read all the Percy Jackson books, don't come at me.
What?
Don't come at me.
What part did you stop at?
Okay, funny story.
Addie.
We'll get there when we get there with this one, but... Okay, so I read the Percy Jackson books, like, when they came out. Like, I read the first book, and that was the first book I read in one sitting. No food breaks, no sleep breaks,
God.
just read the whole book, because I loved it. It was so good.
A slight hyperfixation. Yeah.
Extremely. Like, that book is torn up, basically. Like, it's loved. And then The Sea of Monsters tore through that one. And then the third one tore through that one. I got the fourth book, and life got busy. And then I lost the book.
You stopped before the 5th? You didn't even finish the first?
I had a bookmark. It was like a little piece of construction paper, okay? I put it in there because I was reading it, and then I got busy, so I put a bookmark in there. And then I set it down, and I swear it was there when I left. And then I lost it, and I couldn't find it. I had the 5th book.
You stopped because if you couldn't find your bookmark?
But I'm a cheap person, Alex. I'm not going to re-buy the series when I know I have the damn book. It's somewhere in the house.
Libraries exist, Addie. My
Readers,
God.
this was like in middle school. I am now like a full-fledged adult, and I had not finished the series, and I found the book 2 years ago.
And you didn't finish it?
Well, now it's like, well, now I got to start over the series, because now I don't remember all the little details of the first 3 books, so now I just got to start over. But now the TV series is coming out, and then the Lockwood and Co. fixation has come, so that's why that series is on our list to do, because I really need to actually finish the series. But then I can't read any of the sequel series, like any of the newer books that Rick Riordan has come out with, because it's ruined.
Yeah. I could forgive stopping on book 3, but book 4 is good. And book 5? That's what you're waiting for. That's where all the drama happens.
I know.
I can't believe you.
I know.
Wow. Well, we're going to have to remedy this. And remedy you not ever reading Holes, because that's... Speaking of movie adaptations, holy shit. We had this discussion in text. But Holes, the book, one of the best movie adaptations I have ever seen.
Okay. I'll believe you. The problem is usually I watch a TV show and then I read the book. So I think that's why I'm a little, and I'm just getting more into like.
What about The Midnight Library? You liked that book, right? Is that a good movie adaptation-ish?
Yeah. Okay. That would be my answer. Okay. So final answer, Midnight Library.
All right. Lock it in.
Yeah, that's a great book. It's also really good at our stage in life. A really good book about feeling lost and not knowing what you're doing in life. And I think it'd be a cool movie to see. But, pending.
That's on our list, right? Of books to eventually get to?
Yes, it is. After Holes.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
One of our solo novels that we'll do in between series.
Between everything.
I was like, have we told her? I don't think we've told our listeners this. So we'll do a series, and then we're planning on doing just one novel in between.
To break it up.
So after we're done with the Lockwood and Co. series, then we'll just do Holes, or we'll just do the Midnight Library. And then we'll jump into another series, and then we'll just do one book. So kind of split it up and, shake things up a little bit for y'all. It'll be fun.
Yeah, just so you're not exhausted by us, because you're going to be hearing Lockwood and Co. for about a year.
Yeah.
before we
Buckle
finish
in,
up.
folks. Skull's here to stay.
Book 2. Just getting started.
All right. Let's actually start the episode because, dear Lord, we could go on about movie and TV show adaptations for a long time because we also love books and movies, so we're just two funny gals.
Yes.
Okay, so last time we covered part 1 and part of part 2 in The Whispering Skull. Where we last left off, Lockwood and Co. had just returned back to Portland Row after a very difficult case and had received an invitation to the Fitz Ball when they were suddenly interrupted by a new client walking through the door.
Gotta start the whole book somehow. So we're picking up with chapter 5. We finally learn the identities of our mysterious clients. It's a Mr. Paul Saunders and Mr. Albert Joplin. They're the owners of Sweet Dreams Excavation and Clearance. So basically they work in graveyards and take these potential at-rest spirits that could turn problematic and kill people and dig up the sources and stop them from being a problem before they're even a problem in the quote-unquote problem. You know?
Yeah. Which this is what I brought up last time that I was concerned about, is London is a really old place. They're going to have, like, a shit ton of ghosts. So, makes sense that this would be a service that they do in this world.
Yeah, especially since, like, they said, like, oh, last year, graveyards that were previously thought to be safe turned out to be dangerous when new sources and new visitors just popped up. I, again, am so curious just to, like, what are the rules? Because a lot of people die before their time. You know, there's a lot of unpleasant deaths that are accidents and murders and unfinished business. So, like, who decides? What decides? Who can just pop back up? It's just crazy to me.
Many questions.
Yes, so many questions.
Also, did you note that when we meet Joplin and Saunders, Lucy is just so nice with her descriptions?
I wrote that down. That's my first bullet point. I was like, holy shit, a new book, and Lucy is, like, nice with her descriptions. Like, it's not brutal. It's not ripping them to shreds. The only thing I
You say
noted...
new book. She just described Kips and Cat Godwin in the previous chapters as if they're the worst people on the planet.
It's like a pug. Well, that's people we've met in the old book. Maybe this is just new clients only. She's going to treat with a little more dignity.
New clients, new Lucy.
Yeah. It's been 7 long months since we last checked in. Like, they have grown.
7 months, you can grow so much.
Yeah, a lot has changed.
You know what hasn't changed? Lockwood showing his emotions sometimes through his smile.
Oh, okay. I want to note every time, because he has so many different catalogs of smiles. And this is like the first time we've seen like the polite smile where he's actually done with someone, but it's just being nice.
Yeah, it's funny that Lockwood, for all the other annoying clients, he's like really good at putting on a face. And I don't know if it's just now Lucy is recognizing the different kind of smiles that he has, or if just these people in general, he's really not interested in hearing what they have to say, and that they're digging up old cases. I wonder why.
Yeah, I did think it was pretty interesting. We get into this a little bit later, but with the descriptions of Joplin and Saunders, like, I'm so intrigued because this is basically who George and Lockwood could have been if they had no talent, or who they could turn out to be, because Joplin is very much like George, you know, doing the whole research thing, and we get into that a little bit later, but like they compare, both Saunders and Joplin compare themselves to George and Lockwood. But it's just so interesting.
I put it in my notes that it's interesting that Joplin mirrors George, like, so much. And the whole thing with this novel is just mirrors and everything mirroring each other. Like,
Yes,
ooh,
yes, that is the theme of this book, is mirrors.
That's going to be in a big brain moment at the end, because mirrors is like a whole thing throughout this book that we just have to save that for a later discussion. I actually research it a little bit more.
Ooh.
Ooh.
I'm excited for that BBC over there.
I know. The BBC. Also, we're introduced to this concept of the Night Watch, that they dig up bodies or sources that are probably troublesome nowadays and try to get rid of them. So it really rings true of any issue we have nowadays, that the solution is just to clean up the problem and not just find the root cause of it. And it's so sickening again. Like, why is this?
They're solving the symptoms of the problems instead of actually trying to figure out the root cause, which is just frustrating.
You said that a lot more eloquently than me. Thank you, Alex. You complete me.
But yeah, we do get our first mention of relic men. They steal relics to sell for a price later on, which becomes a little more important near the ending of chapter 8. But yeah, they do mention the Night Watch kids and some freelance sensitives, basically to do this grunt work, which is really sad that they're just, you know, paying these people to do dangerous work, basically taking advantage of them, which also is a common problem. They're not good enough to make quote-unquote agency standards, so they have to do a little bit more dangerous work that would be above agency work. Just like, oh yeah, this world is awful. Taking advantage of children. for money.
Truly. I also started to think in universities there, do they teach any of these skills when you're in like elementary school or something? Or is it just you learn it on the fly? How is the skills that they need, if they do have talents or don't have talents, how is that implemented into their education system in this universe?
I don't know.
Because they can't learn it in college because then they're going to be too old. It's not like the Harry Potter universe where you go to Hogwarts and you study and then you choose what kind of career you want and you can work for the ministry or you can do this or you can do that. And kind of like our world, you build up to having a career in something based on what you want to do. You don't even have to go to college if you don't want to. But what do they do for these kids? Are they taught any of this in school? How is it taught? What are they covering up? Also, how is the government regulating what is taught? Is there cover-up of how the problem started, what they're teaching? Because if so, we could go on another tangent about that in our society.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Like, especially, I'm so curious because Lucy said basically she didn't finish her education, or maybe that was alluded to, because 8 years old, she goes to start working for Jacobs, and then primarily her education is all ghost related, like how to make the bombs, what chains would be relevant for what type of visitor that they're encountering. So I wonder if by the time these kids lose their talents, which is around like the 20 years of age or something, young adults, if they've survived that long and don't go into being a supervisor, if then they'd be like, all right, time to get a job and learn something. Because, like, you still need people to run normal jobs, careers. There can't be that many people that are untalented.
Yeah, and along with it, we were discussing this over text message, but any of these kids, after they've grown up, the things they have seen, is there any sort of medical care that they get for, like, mental medical care? Because clearly they're not going to be okay after this entire experience. And also, who's paying for it? Is it through their parents? Insurance? Does the state or government pay for it? Do they get their own with the job? What's going on? How expensive is this lifestyle for this agent now? Like, how much money are they actually making that's going to benefit them later in life? Because are they then just these washed up heroes or agents that are basically like a war veteran that they have PTSD now from all these experiences? Because if so, how much are they investing in the children afterwards? Are they just leaving them out to dry? I don't know.
Yeah, there are so many questions I want answers to, especially like the whole mechanics of this world, especially when you're done being an agent.
Adding it to my list of questions for
book 6, we're...
Mr. Stroud, I need some answers.
Yes, please. just tell us these answers.
How are the kids in Alaska?
Oh my god, how are the kids in Alaska? What happens if you're allergic to lavender? These are things we need to know.
Oh my god. Anyways, okay. We're also introduced to another type of career that you can have if you don't have talent, project archivists,
yes.
which is what Joplin's job is, that they research everything about a grave or a person that has died so that when they dig it up, they kind of know what they're preparing to battle. I wonder how many amateur project archivists there are. Because similar to true crime cases today, where you have a lot of amateur crime junkies who have podcasts or Reddit posts or whatnot that they like to research on the side. They're not a professional detective or a criminologist, but they really enjoy looking into these cases more. I wonder how many amateur project activists you had and what education you would need to have that role.
Yeah, I'm intrigued. Also, we know that their technology is not as advanced as ours is because, you know, the problem skewed that whole area of growth. But do you think there are podcasts where they talk about, you know, those true crime podcasts where they dig into an old case? I bet there's podcasts.
Maybe a radio station.
Yeah, there's gotta be.
Because even the first book, the Annabelle Ward, they knew it was a huge case previously, and so they knew that bringing up that case again, people have heard of it before because it's been told so many times. So it's clearly been told either through like a TV or through radio that they've heard about this case. And maybe there is kind of like a dateline, basically, of cases that had happened previously before the problem that now they're looking back into them again. So I feel like there's got to be some sort of like TV station or radio station that people listen to about these cold cases. And again, I'm really curious about the cold case, missing people, unsolved murders, how different that portion of the crime world is in this universe compared to ours nowadays, where we have a lot of new technology, whereas they don't, but they also have that they can actually get more information from ghosts, even if the ghosts don't talk to them, per se.
Yeah.
I get really excited. I got it.
No, I'm excited about that too. I just think it's a whole different ballgame. There's just so many avenues you can go into about like how our world would be completely different from theirs. Like I bet they allocate a lot more government spending on solving cold cases and digging into solving murders in the first place. Whereas at least in the United States, it's like, oh, your kid's missing, good luck. Basically, that's how it ends up.
Yeah. So George and Joplin automatically bond, and George actually recognizes Joplin from an article that Joplin wrote, was in the history of London's graveyards, and it was about the tethering of a soul. I thought that was interesting because that's what this entire book is about.
Yes, I thought it was so interesting. First of all, I'm kind of glad that Joplin has a fan because that's super cool that George is excited and interested because especially that's what George, you know, our little researcher in Lockwood & Co. is interested in is the whole sources, the root of the problem and the tethering of the soul. Like, that is a huge avenue of this book. So I'm just so curious. Like, there are so many things in this book where I'm like, okay, did Jonathan Stroud put this in? Was this just an errant thought or was the character of Joplin always going to be the person who ends up being affected by the bone glass just like George is? Obviously, we're getting ahead of ourselves because we haven't even found the bone glass yet, but there are so many little avenues that I am so curious about.
Yeah, and also, I have a theory, but I'd kind of want to finish rereading the rest of this book to see if it's true. But it says that Joplin has this theory of tethering the soul, and George is like, oh, fascinating theory. They go through the case of the body that Lockwood & Co. is supposed to help dig up and secure the source, basically. I wonder how much Joplin actually knew that he isn't telling Saunders and isn't telling the Lockwood & Co. crew, because it makes me think that he knows that the tethering of the soul to an object is a huge part of the bone glass and Bickerstaff in this case. And I'm like, oh, I think he knew from the beginning. But that's just one theory. I have another theory, but I think we should wait.
Even before he was influenced by the bone glass and the whole theory of what the bone glass can show you, he's already interested in it. So it's like, was he the actual perfect candidate, or did he seek it out knowing that Bickerstaff had the same sort of questions that he did and had this whole ghost cult? There's just a lot that I'm very interested in on the reread to analyze.
Okay, so before we get ahead of ourselves, we should actually say what the case is. So
yes.
If you've read this, obviously you know, but if you don't, well, what are you doing with yourself? Get on it.
Yeah.
Saunders is explaining that they came upon an unexpected headstone. This is some Scooby-Doo shit, Alex.
Yes.
Because we got to mention Scooby-Doo at least once an episode.
Of course, at least once an episode. There's just a little unexpected grave that actually the gravestone has whose name it is, and that's Edward Bickerstaff. I'm slurring his
Edmund
word.
Bickerstaff. Edmund.
Is it Edmund?
It's Edmund.
I've been saying it wrong this entire time. I thought it was Edward. Oh no.
Edward Cullen coming back for you.
Yeah, just keep this part in there so you don't have to edit all the time. I said Edward.
No, you said Edmund, I thought.
I made a mistake, guys. It's fine. It's fine. I'll say Edmund from now on. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it's the body of Edmund Bickerstaff. And I think it's funny that when Joplin is telling the story, he's telling it very much like Lockwood tells stories, very dramatic.
I put that in there!
And I think it's funny because Lockwood is not finding it amusing. It's driving Lockwood nuts because they're just over-explaining everything. And he's just has the plain smile. It says he's speaking dryly. It's just...
Yeah, that's like when he discounts everything that the crew has seen and, you know, all this activity. He's like, yeah, I don't put much stock into what those sensitives say. Lockwood's like, check yourself. Yeah, you came to a bunch to solve your problem.
Yeah, check yourself before you wreck yourself.
But the case itself is that they came across this unexpected gravestone. There's a lot of activity associated with it. The sensitives that were around there, basically, they were dizzy, they had headaches, they felt like they were being watched, like they were going to be yanked under the ground. Basically, rang all the bells of, well, this is important. Probably a type 2, we need an outside agency to deal with it per DPRAC standards so that they can get paid, of course. Otherwise, I'm sure they would just take advantage of the kids. And the gravestone was for Edmund Bickerstaff, who, after Joplin's research, was this not great guy who was a family doctor who, after some scandalous claims, became a medical practitioner at a sanitarium. Because, of course, that's ethical.
I also wanted to note, I like that the Lockwood & Co. crew is asking a lot of questions to the clients before they go in.
They learned their lesson with Coombe Carey Hall. and the wraiths that they did not research enough.
And, like, they're questions that I also have as well, because there's a lot of empty holes, and that's something that they keep noting, saying there's so many loose ends, and there's so many things that just, like, don't make sense. Like, it just seems like such an incomplete story.
Yeah, it's very open-ended, and everyone thinks that it's just going to go so smooth, which is, ringing alarms in my head, because that's never going to go as planned.
When does it ever go smooth?
Yeah. The one question I have that no one brings up is there's this unexpected grave, and we learn a little bit later the person was probably buried quickly and not by regulations, which is why it was just an unmarked plot. If you're trying to hide a body, why the hell would you put their name on a gravestone?
Agreed. I wonder if there was something in their ghost cult that they were like, oh, you have to mark it or something. I don't know. I don't know enough about ghost movies because I don't watch them.
I understand, like, the knowledge that goes behind, yeah, let's hide this body in a graveyard because that's where the bodies go. That's smart. Hide it where no one will look for it. But Addie, if I buried you and I murdered you and I didn't want anyone to find you, I would not put Addie on your grave. I would give you a false name.
What would it be?
I don't know. I'd have to think of that. I was trying to think of one, and all I could think of was a Florence. So maybe that's your alter ego.
Why?
I don't know.
My name is no longer Addie. My name is now Florence Nightingale.
Well, Penelope came to mind first, and I was like, oh no, I can't see that.
What about me says Florence, Alex?
I don't know.
Explain yourself. You made your bed, lie on it.
I was caught off guard. I didn't have enough time. I didn't have enough time to think of a
Well,
good
you just
name.
said you murdered me. I think I was a little caught off guard.
Yeah. We're gonna go back to two besties read as ghosts. It's gonna be great.
It's fine. Our podcast from the other side.
Yeah, from the other side.
The one question I actually liked because I'm dumb and I like when things are explained to me is Lucy's like, well, why don't you dig up these bodies in the daytime? And then they provide the reasoning right afterwards. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense.
I asked the same question, and I was still like, okay.
Well, DPEC says they have new guidelines that says they have a legal obligation to bring in agents for all graves that may contain a type 2 visitor. And so the government funds this cost, but the agents have to carry out the work at night so that they can confirm claims from the night watch crew to make sure it's actually a type 2 ghost. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time digging up a grave that probably is fine. So it makes sense that it's at nighttime, which makes it even creepier.
The bureaucracy strikes again.
They bring up that this guy is Edmund Bickerstaff, but 1877 is when he died. So he's been gone a long time, and now just suddenly he's reappeared. And that's when Lockwood is getting very curious about this case. And I wanted to bring this up because it gives more background into why George and Lockwood really vibe as friends. Because I think in the first novel, you see a lot of differences, and especially before this, we see Lockwood and George arguing about, well, you didn't do the research, well, you didn't do this, and you see that they have these very big differences, and that Lockwood likes to rush into a case, doesn't really like to do the research, whereas George wants to hang back, do the research. He's okay with the action, but he wants to make sure he's prepared. But this is where you see that Lockwood also is interested in different aspects of the problem, same as George. So they have this piqued interest in why the problem started and in case that challenged their way of thinking and why the problem is occurring. I thought it was really cute.
I had another thought where Joplin rummaged around his papers. First of all, get this man a folder because I'm sick of him dropping his papers and rummaging around. I think it's very annoying. But he pulls out this old, a binder clip or something. He pulls out this old article from the Gazette, and we know that Lockwood is very much into reading these old news stories. That's how a lot of agencies get their breaks. That's how they got their break with Annabelle Ward. They had this previous public interest. So when he flourishes out this old article story about the Hampstead Horror, the terrible discovery at the sanatorium, after they say he's been gone a long time and now he's reappeared, that's when Lockwood peeks up, and I was like, is he only interested because this could be a secondary Annabelle Ward case to him where it's interesting? Yeah. So I thought that was interesting.
But I think he is genuinely interested, though, a little bit.
Oh, yeah. I think he definitely is. That's why him and George are vibing around.
Which, especially when you find out, kind of a spoiler alert, but you'll figure out essentially what his parents did. And you could see what he gets from his parents.
Yeah.
Also, this is really, really tiny. But I was listening to the audiobook and reading the book at the same time, because I do that. And it says in the paragraph talking about Bickerstaff that previously he had been an ordinary family doctor, but his practice went south. That's what the American version says. If we listen to the audiobook, it's the British version, and it says that things went to the bad.
Went to the bad? What the hell kind of grammar is that?
Is that a thing?
Yeah, I know that there's some differences, but interesting.
I mean, like, the biscuits, cookies debate, that's, flashlight, torch, come on. And I know what those things are. But this one, I was like, huh, is that a thing? Please tell me, any of our non-American audience, did I just hear it wrong? I had to go back a couple times, and I heard it went to the bad.
I would like to know if that's a common phrase. That is so interesting. Because, I mean, maybe they don't say that things go south when things go bad. That's common rhetoric in our language, you know?
Well, I also don't know enough about the American English to know where it went south comes from. Like, why south? Why can't it go north? Why not east or west?
Well, I
Why
thought,
not up
like,
or down?
south, like, you know, south is also, like, down, and down is kind of like hell. And then if you're looking at America, south is, like, you know, the losers of the Revolutionary War.
The Revolutionary.
Sorry. The losers of the Civil War. I'm sorry. I am not a history major. In fact, that is probably one of my worst subjects. I know the difference between the Revolutionary and the Civil War, I promise.
It's okay. I said illustrious. Started with the letter A. We're really good at math and science, I promise.
Yeah, sort of.
Also, I think it's cool that you start to see similarities between Joplin and the Lockwood and Co. crew here, because all of them are interested in this case, while Saunders and Deeprek aren't. Saunders and Deeprek have the mindset of get the job done, move on to the next case. Get this job done, next case. Like, go, move on. And usually Lockwood has that mindset, but I think Lucy and George, in a way, are good for him to actually get him to think about the case and not get stuck in the mindset of Deeprek, of moving on and not wanting to talk about his feelings or what he thinks or what makes him curious. Like, actually having him be a kid again. I mean, we're going to learn that Joplin's not all that he says he is, but I think Joplin is a good example for the Lockwood and Co. crew of not letting that childlike wonder die, especially for George, showing that he can continue being curious for the rest of his days, even if his talents do fade.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely, when we first met Joplin, he was looking around the room at all of the ghost masks on the wall with open curiosity, and I was like, it's gonna be George when he loses his talent. He's still gonna be curious and asking the questions.
Yeah.
Back to Bickerstaff, he's creepy.
He's so creepy.
He has a cult.
He has a cult. He was eaten by rats, apparently. Like, what?
Yeah, the rats were super creepy, and I just love I can visualize this scene perfectly where Saunders is sitting there describing with gruesome detail all of these rats.
They're
and how
theater
they
kids.
looked, and yeah, wet and munching and gushing, and then he's like, oh, does anyone want the last Swiss roll? Oh, it's a juicy one. It's like, oh, great. You're just trying to gross him out to get the roll.
I just, like, laugh because Saunders and Joplin are both, like, theater kids. And I think Lockwood's just like, I'm the only theater kid. Let me be the person. You know? He's a little jealous.
Lockwood has the drama for the Lockwood and Co. group.
He
and
does.
he is mad that people are encroaching.
I thought it was interesting because I guess when you see the TV show, they kind of don't know that it's Edmund Bickerstaff until later. That's something they learn after they dig up the body. But in the book, I remember getting to this part, and the first time I read it, I kept having to go back in the audiobook. I'm like, I feel like I'm missing like 10 things because they're going so fast through what happened to him. I don't know what was going on. Like, it didn't answer any of my questions. And I was like, oh, no, that's literally how it's written. Like, there are so many holes. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense. And they all recognize this. And what I wanted to know is the end of this chapter is great for one reason and one reason alone. So on the last case, they had a case that had a lot of holes. There wasn't a lot that they knew about the case going in. And Lockwood rushed them into both cases. He rushed them into the Annabelle Ward case, and he rushed them into the Coombe-Carey Hall case without consulting George and Lucy first to see if that's what they wanted to do and if they felt prepared research-wise. But now, this time, they're given another case where they say audibly that there are loose ends and so many questions. And the first thing Lockwood does after Saunders asks them if they're going to take the case is he looks at them.
Yeah.
He doesn't answer, says it at the end of the chapter, like, he glanced at me, he glanced at George, we returned his gaze with shining eyes. And then he says, we would be delighted. He takes the case. I love it.
That is a huge shift. He's not openly consulting his team, which he could do. There's always room for growth. But he at least looks at them instead of just automatically being like, yeah, we'll take it. Growth.
Yeah, like the Coombe-Carey Hall case. Come on. Okay, now chapter 6. First question. So if you die in this universe, do they just burn your body just to be safe?
You know, okay, in a later book, an agent dies, and they talk about how they burned his body and how everything was right because he couldn't have been alive as the fetch, you know? But Lucy's dad wasn't burned, was he? He was just buried with, like, silver over his eyes, and he had silver and lavender on him or something. I'd have to do a read.
I'm curious about that. Maybe we need to take note of that next time we reread these books.
I was
together.
like, yeah, I'm sure it'll happen again. There's definitely new DPRAC standards on how to correctly bury a body so that they wouldn't return as a visitor. But I don't know if that means just outright burning everyone, like cremating.
I feel like it's kind of going to be like a lot of problems we see nowadays. They're just trying to treat the symptoms. They're not actually treating the problem itself. If companies similar to Saunders, where they're like, well, no, but if you start burning people, then we're going to run out of business. Granted, there's a lot of bodies in London that probably are going to be problems in the years to come. But I wonder if you have companies like that are against the government implementing these rules. So I wonder if it's just like suggestions from DPRAC or from if it's agency that they're like, no, you can't burn the bodies, then we're going to lose customers. Wow. You know?
Yeah.
We are also introduced to ghost cults.
Yeah.
So they walk into the Kensal Green Cemetery, which is where Edmund Bickerstaff's body is, and there are ghost cult people at the entrance that say, the Open Arms Fellowship, we welcome our friends from the other side. That's terrifying.
Yeah, I do like Lucy's response where she wants to welcome him with magnesium flares. So sassy. I love it.
And they meet a boy at the entrance that he seems like at least in the audiobook, he sounds like he's from Newsies, but the British version.
I love this kid. He's so sassy. He's a night watch boy. He gives zero fucks that Lockwood and Co. are there. Like, you don't look like agents. You don't have the fancy uniforms. He's not going to get up there in his light. He just doesn't care, and I love it.
No, he's so funny. And Lockwood is saying, oh, this case will be fine. George and Lucy just are unamused. Like, really? When has it ever been fine, Lockwood?
I know. He's being so team optimism on this one. I'm like, you already know this case isn't gonna go well because there's already people that have been affected and stuff. This is a bad guy. Of course he's gonna pop out of his coffin. Like,
well, especially the build up to it when you see all the Night Watch crew that they're like, we're not going back there, and there's the guy that's mad, and you can kind of see a union forming. Also, why has this not happened sooner? Because, these conditions are not great. But these people do not want to go near this grave because it's made them sick. It's made them unsure, and they are feeling very unsafe. They don't want to be there anymore. And Night Watch people, like, don't do the fighting, as Lucy say. They just have the talents. They just don't want to fight. And Saunders is not the nicest person to them.
Yeah, he basically says, like, you're still gonna work, just go somewhere else, and kind of kicks him away. Because he started the whole digging early. Like, he was so impatient to get this ghost gone that he had them start digging before Lockwood and Co. even got there. Ridiculous.
And Lockwood, being Lockwood, just puts them at ease. I like Lucy's description. I put it as purple moment, where she says, this was classic Lockwood, friendly, considerate, empathetic. It's so nice. And I will say, I think the TV show, how they adapted this part, is perfect. Chef's kiss. Like, Cameron Chapman, I'm calling you out. That was just amazing acting there, because I read this obviously after seeing the TV show, and this is like, that's exactly that's it. It's off the page. Like, beautifully done.
He basically just uses his charisma to diffuse all the tension, and it's chef's kiss perfectly portrayed in the TV show.
Yeah, it's so good. And kind of like Peeta Mellark in the Hunger Games film, you see how much charisma is a real weapon. Like, you can do a lot of damage with that, and how much Lockwood really knows that and utilizes that skill perfectly. I love it.
I dislike Lucy's description of the sensitives, where basically she calls them hippies and says that she doesn't get along with them because they're girls. I was like, ooh, there's that rough descriptor that we've been missing. She basically said, like, she would slap them. That would be her go-to. And I was like, of course. As we learned in the last book, Lucy loves a good slap.
Yeah. I mean, I do understand it, because Lucy is very Gryffindor, if we're going back to our Harry Potter talk. She's very Gryffindor in that she is like, okay, well, you have this talent, use it to fight ghosts. Especially when she meets Flo Bones, she sees that there are different ways to use your talent other than just fighting ghosts. And we can get to that discussion about Flo Bones when we meet Flo Bones, but I think that's just an overarching thing that's challenging Lucy in this book, is just seeing the different lifestyles you can have other than just being an agent that the first book showed us. I 100% don't get her dislike of girls, but I could understand her frustration of seeing these people where she's up every night fighting ghosts, and she's like, you have the same talent I do. Come on, get off your ass and do something. Yeah, I do that nowadays with some people that, like, they're super smart and they don't want to do a job that actually helps society, but that's another soapbox. Speaking of girls, I do hate that Saunders keeps calling Lucy girly every single time.
I don't like that. It's very dismissive.
Yeah, it is.
And icky. It's icky.
Yeah, feels kind of sexist, but that's just me. I don't, if anyone called me girl or girly, I would tell them where to go. In my head, of course, because I'm a people pleaser.
I would make a face at them.
I would be devious.
Yeah. But basically, the tension is diffused. They go inside. We get our first little mouse-gatool moment, a little mystery mouse-gatool for later about the catafalque.
Catafalque. I've never heard of those before.
Yeah, neither had I.
Again, I'm not a history person. I don't know this stuff, but that's interesting. I didn't know this was a thing.
Real quick, there's one throwaway line that I think is so interesting.
Wait, what?
Hem. One Night Watch kid said it had 7 heads. Ridiculous, I sent her home.
Oh my god!
Do you think that Night Watch kid saw the 7 ghosts of the bone glass? Because I was blown away.
What? Why did I not think? Oh my god, you're so smart, Alex.
So
Wow.
I marked that out. It could just be a complete toss away, and then it just so happens to be the number of ghosts in the bone glass. But oh my goodness, if that was pre-planning, that's crazy.
That's gotta be pre-planned. There's no way. Oh my god, I didn't even notice that. That's so good.
I know. I just think that's so cool. All right.
Okay,
Yes.
anyways. So yes,
Moving
they yeah, moving on. So they go to the grave and everything's a little too quiet. Lockwood doesn't see death glows, George doesn't see anything, and the only thing Lucy sees or hears is a faint vibration. Ooh, creepy.
I don't like that.
No, I don't like this, and it's standard spooky movie vibes, as I always say. You know, it's really quiet, and then there's a jump scare from Joplin.
Of course. Yeah. As if it's not creepy enough with the unmarked grave. He just pops up and is like, did I miss it?
I do like that the only 2 major descriptions she has of Joplin, well, actually 3, now that you mentioned the other one, I'm like, yeah, she always mentions this, is he's always dropping his papers, he always has his glasses, and he always has dandruff. This man must have really bad dandruff, because she brings it up, like, every single time.
Yeah, for real. And, like, we know it's not dandruff later, but how do you not say something to someone when they have really bad dandruff? Like, I don't even know how you, like...
I mean, how many times do you tell someone if they have something stuck in their teeth?
She could just get him a bottle of Head and Shoulders and just, like, slide it across the table.
Put it in with his fallen papers.
Yeah.
I have another purple moment where Lucy is talking about what she is hearing, the vibration, and it's just such good writing. Watching the TV show, you actually hear what's going on. And reading this description, I was like, great job, Complete Fiction. I'm saying it again. Amazing job. But even just reading this, I could actually physically feel what was going on. That feeling when you jump into a swimming pool and they haven't heated it and the freezing water hits your body, like that pain. And then also like when there's vibration and then it suddenly gets really loud. Oh my gosh. Ugh, it's so
I
creepy.
highlighted it all yellow, which is
Oh,
like
you're-
chef's
it's
kiss,
so
like,
yellow.
Visually descriptive. I just went crazy. But yeah, the creepiest thing I think is the cloud of flies that she hears. Like, have you ever heard like a lot of flies at once? Because it is horrifying.
Yeah. Oh, my dad used to have bees, so I know bees. Those are creepy.
Oh yes. But it's an awful noise. I hate it. So I was like immediately like very unsettled.
Yeah, very unsettling. And when they eventually find the coffin, they find that it's just made of iron.
Dun, dun, dun.
The plot thickens. And then this is where we all go, oh shit, and go chapter 7.
Not an easy case, Lockwood. Chapter 7.
And Lucy is not okay. Also, I'm kind of annoyed because why isn't she telling them what she's feeling? Lockwood asks her, are you all right, Lucy? In her head, she's like, oh, I'm not great. I feel nauseous. I feel this. And she's like, I'm fine. Lucy!
Yeah, that made me so mad because it's not like, oh, Lucy, you're a girl. Are you okay? They know she's more sensitive. She's already proven that they believed her in the last book, that she can talk to type 3 ghosts. They know that she understands and hears more, and she just knows more than they do. So why would she not tell them? She is literally like another safeguard that's keeping them all safe, and she's just keeping this stuff to herself. It's like, you are not coming off as tough. You're being dumb and putting everyone at risk.
Yeah, I'm all about open, honesty conversations. So why are we not telling people? Come on, Lucy. You know better. You don't like secrets. Oh, we are once again reminded that they are children because they are flipping a coin and they're debating who gets to open the grave. And
Yeah, poor George does not want to.
he does not want to, but they bring up Miss Barrett's tomb again.
Again, book 6. I need to know the story because it gets brought up literally like every chapter almost.
Stroud, we need book 6, and we need the casebook. Thank
Please.
you.
Please tell us. Yes, but it's poor George's turn.
Also, I liked the mention of the one case where George is like, but I had to go into that one case. She's like, you mean the laundry room with all the pens?
Terrifying. I have a blue moment for sadness because obviously George doesn't want to do this. He's trying to get out of it. And then he's like, if I don't make it back home, I've made a will. I'll tell you where to find it. And I was like, okay, is he joking? Like, I know he's saying this in a joking way, but like, I'm sure he's actually serious about the potential that they all may die. So they probably need wills, which is just heartbreaking. It's like, oh, I know this is a joke, but it's not funny.
I know. I actually was laughing at a little bit. I'm like, I am George in this moment. Where Lockwood's like, you're fine with it, right? He's like, no, I'm not fine. Where are you going to be standing? How far are you going to be? What do I have on me? There's a will. Just sign my life away right now. And I was like, I am George. This is me in every life or death situation.
Poor George.
And George opens it and he screams, which is terrifying.
Not our typical George response.
No. And Bickerstaff's body is disgusting.
It's very much the scene in The Mummy where the mummy pops out and they're like, why is this thing not dry? It's all gooey. That is what Bickerstaff's body is. A gooey, gross thing that doesn't look like it was eaten by rats.
Now, I would like to give you a mini soapbox moment.
A baby soapbox?
Listeners, I have to apologize as I may have gone a little overboard on this soapbox, so I've decided, as episode editor, that we're going to save that for the BBC. So let me just zoom through this next bit really quick.
Whoa!
It was just,
my God.
I know, right? This is like a deep rabbit hole. And I'm like, this is literally a throwaway line. It's like one sentence, but it's talking how Bickerstaff is wearing purple.
Yeah.
Like, he brings up like, oh, he's wearing a black suit. Yeah, black. And then there's purple.
Yeah, boring. Yeah.
And
then there's a purple cape. Interesting.
Yes. I don't know. I found it really interesting. And Bickerstaff obviously is a villain in this story, but he's not the main villain. So it feels Scooby-Doo of, okay, we're going to give you a red herring. This is your stereotypical villain. We're going to cover him with the stereotypical color of purple that you see in childhood movies, but then it's not.
Yeah. Just slap that villain on him.
That's my soapbox for this week.
I like that soapbox.
There you go.
I never noticed that. Like, obviously, I noticed for Disney, like, the magic of a villain is usually that ghostly green that's, like, neon. But, yeah, Maleficent, Ursula, I'm so intrigued by this. It makes me want to rewatch everything. Wow.
I know, right? Yeah, I'd have to do a deep dive on that. Maybe that will be another big brain corner. Maybe we'll bring it back around. Who knows?
Yeah, I'd like to have you follow up on that, because that's blowing my brain right now.
Okay, good. All right. So then they put the silver chain net over the coffin and it's blotted out. And then they're having a come to Jesus moment with George asking if he's okay, and he's clearly not okay. And I like that Lucy and Lockwood are really concerned about him.
Yeah, I put that they both are worried about him and keeping their eyes on him, and basically George was kind of sucked in by what happened. Lucy also was she heard the voices talking to her, and Lockwood was shouting at her to seal it up, and that's kind of what snapped her out of it. Again, Lockwood saving her life. But yeah, poor George was affected by it and is slowly improving and is like just hyper fixated on what that glass was. I also highlighted that whole section yellow. So I was like, oh my God, this is important stuff. It's very descriptive. He said basically it was awful. He couldn't take his eyes away. Basically one of those train wreck moments where you know something's bad, but you can't stop staring at it.
Yeah. Do you ever have those moments, Alex, where you see a train wreck and you can't look away?
Sometimes I have that moment where I'm talking and I just know that something's going to come out, that I'm like, it's verbal diarrhea and it's just coming out and it's not what you wanted to say and there's no stopping it and you're just like, oh no.
It's like whenever we say a word wrong in this podcast, or you say something wrong, I just sit here like, this is going to be comedy gold next episode. But yeah, poor George. And sadly, this is the start of him doing stupid shit.
Yeah, this is George's dumb arc. Where He's just being dumb. Poor George.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, they're asking the questions, why was he encased in iron? If this was before the problem. Lockwood basically says that it's always been used to combat evil and spirits and ghosts, so that's probably why.
And Lucy's hearing a voice.
Yes. Why was Lucy hearing what she was hearing? Why was it able to affect him so much with all that iron? Why did he have a gunshot wound in his head and wasn't nibbled on by rats? Why was the grave itself unmarked? If this guy was a big dude, had his own ghost cult, was prominent, scandal notwithstanding, in society, why was he just thrown in a grave that was hastily buried? There's a lot of questions here. What the hell is the bone glass? Or the shiny metal object in his hand? There's a lot of questions that they're asking. That's good.
And they're good questions. If you had just read this book and not seeing any TV show, you would have a lot of the same questions.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so then Lockwood is off signing papers with Joplin. Lucy is cleaning up all their stuff, and George is helping Joplin just check the grave, and he accidentally pulls off the silver net.
Oh, George. Yeah, it just starts to slide off when he's trying to show Joplin the inscription, which they're not supposed to be doing, by the way. They're supposed to stay behind the chains because it's so awful of a source that's affecting them. The silver net dislodges, it slips to the side. Basically, Joplin and George don't notice, but Lucy looks over when one of the big burly men who are supposed to keep the relicman away is like, what is your friend doing? She notices that there's a third person there. It's basically what I picture as a Dementor, just a cowled figure. You know, it's Bickerstaff just hovering over them, just creeping. She says she can see a chin and jagged teeth. How creepy.
Yes!
So scary.
So creepy! So scary. And Lucy just has the epic moment. She's just like, oh, fuck this shit. She takes out her sword and just chucks it at
Yeah.
them.
Not a salt bomb, but she goes right for the sword. Ugh, so cool.
It's an epic moment for Lucy. Oh, I love her.
Yeah. Basically, then George and Joplin snapped out of it. Lucy saves the day. Joplin drops his papers, of course. And the visitor's gone.
Dun, 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 dun. Chapter 8. Lockwood is pissed, but rightfully so, in a way, because George was being really dumb. And I do agree with Lockwood. He's yelling at George of, you put everything at risk. You're never like this. Like, Joplin shouldn't affect you. Like, he shouldn't have this effect on you to push you this far. And I agree. And Lockwood is arguing that this case they were pretty much done with. And George can't let it go for some reason. What Annabelle Ward was to Lucy, this case is to George.
Yeah.
So the circumstances are the same, but they're a little different.
Yep. This book is very George focused. This is his case where he can't let it go. He needs to know this knowledge. What was the inscription? What did it mean? And he is already putting himself and others at risks for it, which is not going to change. But I do appreciate that Lockwood does the very, like, he's silent in the car on the way home and he waits and then he yells at him, just like that your parents do. And then you get home and they slam the door and they're like, what were you thinking? Like,
He's the mad dad.
but Lucy did mention that as much as anything, it was George's careless amateurism that really offended him. I was like, oh, okay, so Lockwood's also mad that George is embarrassing, breaking these dumb rules in front of everyone. I do love George is fighting back, basically saying there's more we need to know. Can't just let Deep Rock have it. Joplin mentioned that too, which I think is red flag, that Joplin didn't want Deep Rock to take it away right away. But I thought it was interesting that Lockwood is basically like, okay, the job is done. This is Deep Rock's job now. Don't you agree, Lucy? And Lucy's like, well, yeah, absolutely. But also, like, did you see the inscription, George? Like, she's playing both sides of this. She's just agreeing to what Lockwood says, but actually is very curious as to what it is. So she's very much the middleman.
Yeah, that's what I put in my notes. I like that Lucy is a good balance between Lockwood and George, in that she agrees with Lockwood. She can be as reckless and headstrong as Lockwood, but she also is very curious like George. They're like a triangle. They're all very different, but they all complement each other in a nice way. Lockwood balances out Lucy and George. George balances out Lockwood and Lucy Lucy really does balance out George and Lockwood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I will admit, I think Lockwood takes it a little too far. Oh, wow, twinning. I think Lockwood takes it a little too far, bringing up everything else about George's research.
It's like when you're in a fight with your sibling and you say the one thing that it's not relevant to what's happening. You know, Lockwood is very upset with how George handled the case, and then he's just yelling at him, and then that little other tidbit that he was angry about George not doing as much research and being schooled by Bobby Vernon especially just kind of slips out, and it's like, shoot, I shouldn't have said that. That's too hard. You know, that's something that you don't mention. It's a little too rough. And poor George, like, he takes it to heart.
Yeah, and Lucy mentions that he takes off his glasses.
Yeah, poor George.
Oh, George. I just wanted to hug him. And then I like that Lockwood immediately is apologizing.
He's like, oops, yeah, that was too far.
I like that Lockwood sits there for a moment and is like, that was not fair. I am really sorry. I did not mean to take it that far. I appreciate that Lockwood does that. Again, I do like Lockwood as character because he has those moments like that, which are good.
And he owned up to it. He could have just not said anything. They could have had a whole fight. But like you said, immediately he was like, oops, that's my bad.
And then he's threatening to put something in his cocoa.
God, I love that part. I laid it a green. Extra frothy for you.
What is he putting in the froth? I want to know.
I don't want to know what he did.
What do you think he put in there?
Maybe he's spitting it.
I mean, I think he would do that anyways, but he wouldn't say, I'm going to make it extra frothy.
Yeah, I don't want to think of what he did.
He puts little sprinkles in a heart for Lucy and is like, thank you, Lucy, for being by my side. And he just gives Lockwood an empty cup.
Yeah, it's just dishwater. And then we get a sweet little moment while George is in the kitchen between Lockwood and Lucy, where basically he's like, I'm so impressed. That was great reflexes. You could have killed George, but you didn't. That's incredible aim. And she's like,
you think this is
yeah.
cute?
Yeah. She's like, you didn't even try. You weren't aiming, were you? You just threw it.
I was like, you put this as cute? I put this as fucking hilarious. Because this is me on a daily basis.
I thought it was very, like, cute leadership, and then I was also like, haha. It just ends being, like, very funny.
I like, he was like, you totally planned that, right? She goes, nah. No, I didn't.
That was an accident. Yeah, we're lucky I didn't kill George. Oh, God.
Oh, my goodness. So then everyone leaves, and Lucy is sitting on a chair, and the skull talks. Da-da-da.
And he's so sassy. He calls her... He says that she's looking rough. Like, he's just like, you look awful.
You look like hell.
Oh, God. I love the skull. So sassy. He was just waiting for a moment when she was alone before he, like, decided to talk to her again.
I like how she doesn't really realize it's the skull for a hot second. She's like, wait, what?
She's just openly like, yeah, it was a rough night.
I like how she's like, you, and he's like, me. There's actually, okay, this is a very specific reference. Have you seen, it's a Netflix TV show called Alexa and Katie.
I don't think so.
Oh, you should give it a watch. It's pretty cute. It's a cute little sitcom. Anyways, about these two best friends, Alexa and Katie. But there's, I don't know why, the best relationship in that show happens in like the last half of the last season. But one of the girls, she works at a coffee shop, and it's like an enemies to lovers plotline where this guy starts, and she does not like this guy because she had dealt with him previously. And the same conversation happens. He walks in the door and she goes, you. And he's like, me. And I just am like, so that's Lucy and that's Skull. That is how I'm picturing it, and that's how I'm hearing it in my head of like, you, me.
Once again, I'm thinking of Harry Potter, where Harry's just in the Chamber of Secrets and Tom Riddle's like, I am the heir of Slytherin. Just monologuing. That's how I think of Skull. Just drama queen.
Oh, yeah, he is. I like that he also is saying, I'm disappointed that you didn't heed my warning. Death's in life and life's in death. That's what I said. The problem is you're stupid, Lucy.
Okay, but that is the most vague sentence ever.
Yes.
Like, what kind of hint is that? That's all he said. He didn't explain everything. Like, okay, Riddle. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, it's like, that's not helpful, Skull, at all. Like, come on.
He does say that she's alone, and she says, no, I have friends. And he's like, who, George? Again, they make a fat joke at George's expense. And then brings out
Deceitful Lockwood.
Okay, I have a question, because, yeah, I got excited. Skull brings up, basically, like, there's a door upstairs. What's behind it? There's iron strip. What's in the room? How the hell does Skull know? Does Skull know? Like, he's been at the house since George has. Like, obviously Lockwood didn't take him into the room, and George hasn't looked in the room. So where has Skull been sitting where he can, like, analyze the door?
Maybe he was sitting on a place by the landing and just was hanging out there.
Just, like, bored, just analyzing how the door frame is.
I'd be more surprised if Skull didn't know what was happening in that room.
Yeah, because he says, good thing you'd never have left alive. Like, does he know, or is he just fibbing? Like, can he sense what's in there?
Yeah, I think he knows a little bit. I don't think he knows completely what's going on in there, but I think he has seen enough and heard enough, probably, for how sassy the Skull is and vague he is when he talks. I think the Skull always knows a lot more than he lets on.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Because he deals in information. That's the only power play he has, to get what he wants. He gives out selective information and manipulates the team, which good for him, I mean.
I will stand by, and this is back to our devious discussion. The scariest and most powerful people are the people that sit and watch.
Yeah.
I think that's why he's such a good character, because this whole time, for years, he's just been sitting and watching and observing this crew. That's what Lucy is scared about, and she brings it up to Lockwood and George of that, oh, well, he's just trying to create tension between us. That's what Type 3 visitors do. And it's like, but that's why Skull should be so dangerous, because that's all he's been doing for years.
Yeah, he's literally been watching you and learning your motivations. Like, dangerous stuff, you learn a lot, not only by what people actively share, but how they act, when no one else is watching besides you in a skull in a jar. But, like, there's just so much that he's learned. I would love to know, like, exactly what he has tallied in his brain and what notes to throw out when.
And speaking of which, so Lucy yells at George and Lockwood to come in the room, and Lockwood spills his cocoa. Tragic. Tragedy has occurred. Again, we've said this in the last episode. I do like that they automatically believe her.
Oh, yeah. And not only that, they definitely know she was about to kick the jar because they pulled her back and they're like, calm down. we know you're talking the truth.
Yeah, and they're like, oh my gosh, like, what was it like? What searing insights did it give? And she says, well, George called you fat and Lockwood called you deceitful. So really insightful stuff.
I just love George's reaction where he's not like, he's not offended that it called him fat. He's like disappointed that it didn't say anything else. He's like, if I wanted to know that, I could look in a mirror. I don't give a shit about my appearance. Like, tell me about the other side.
Love you, George.
Yeah.
I highlighted as it's like a sad moment, but it also is like a dark blue moment of like, ooh, this is like foreshadowing the whole debacle of the Hollow Boy. But Lockwood, I like that he's really trying to have Lucy be honest with him, even if he's not honest back. I do appreciate that he is like, I can take it. Please don't hide this from me. He's really trying to get her to be openly honest with him.
Oh, but he's such a little liar about it, saying that he won't be offended. I won't be mad. Immediately is mad. It's like, okay.
I know, and gosh, this is a tense moment, the tension. Oh my god. Because Lucy brings up, he said something about what's behind that door, and Lockwood's like, oh yeah, sure. It just magically brought up what happened behind the door.
Yeah, this same door you've been asking me about? Like, of course, what are the odds?
I mean, I completely understand Lucy for being like, I really don't want to talk about it. It's like when you have a fight with your parents or your siblings, and it comes up again, you're like, I really don't want to bring it up because I don't want us to fight again, but I brought it up again, and you don't want to talk about it, and they're like, no, you can be honest, and it does, and then you're just like, you told me to be honest with you, come on, like, but it's so tense, and Lucy brings up in the end, I think it's like the last thing she says in the discussion, is that this is an issue of trust, and it is. It is an issue of trust. It pisses me off that Lockwood is pushing her so much in this moment to be honest and have so much open communication, and he's not in return.
Well, and he's like, we totally believe you that the ghost was telling you this. You believe he's talking to you. And then she literally tells him what it says, and he's like, oh, sure. What a coincidence. Dude, you can't ask for the truth and be mad about it, and you can't say you believe Lucy when the ghost is telling her this manipulative stuff that you know, and then assume that she lied and it wasn't the ghost. Like, come on, man.
Okay, then I have a question for you. Do you think George is just sitting there drinking his cocoa like,
Mom and Dad are
shit?
fighting?
Or do you think he's still sitting there going, call me fat? What? Really? That was it? Nothing else?
No. I think it's a bit of both. I'd like to think like a small part of him again is like glad he's like, oh, okay, now Lockwood and Lucy are fighting. Like Lockwood's mad at Lucy now, not just me.
He's like, ooh, the Kermit meme. the tea.
The tea, yeah.
The tension is diffused when they get a call to tell them that the mirror has been stolen from Edmund Bickerstaff's grave. It's been, 4 hours? And it was stolen? Oh my gosh. The plot thickens.
Dun, dun,
and that's where
dun.
we end part 2.
Yes. I do like in this last sentence, Lockwood comes back in and announces the break-in. But I think that the rhetoric in which he says it is really interesting because he first says one of the Night Watch kids was hurt, and then do you remember the creepy mirror? It's been stolen. So I just think it's so interesting, whereas like in past books, Barnes specifically has talked about how agencies need these supervisors to prevent loss of property and property damage and then minimum loss of life, whereas it's like ranking property over agents. And then Lockwood flipped the situation. He talks about how a Night Watch kid who's not even on an agent's level was hurt, and then mentions the missing property. I just thought it was really interesting to see like, okay, the priorities in the way that they're talking.
And that's how we end part 2. Now we are on to the next portion of our podcast, the what if question of the week. So the question this week is, what if it had been Lucy or Lockwood who had been selected to open the iron coffin?
I think if it was Lockwood who had opened the iron coffin, he wouldn't have necessarily been as entranced by the bone glass as George was. But I think if Lucy had, and she got a good look of the bone glass and heard more of what Bickerstaff was whispering about, like, look at your desires, I think the whole story would have ended the same way, and I think that she would have been more into the case, whereas she was kind of siding with Lockwood earlier about how, like, yeah, it's Deep Rock's job. I think she would have had George's tenacity, like how she did with the Annabelle Ward case. I think it would have been two people, because I don't think at all that George would have dropped the mystery of the inscription and all this knowledge. I think he would have been just as involved as he is. I don't think anything would have changed if it was Lucy. I think it'd be even more digging into it and more fast-paced.
If it was Lockwood, Lucy, or George, it would have been the same. Like, one of them would have screamed and they would have put the silver net over it. But it's the part after it of whoever was just with Joplin afterwards. And it would have been George, because Joplin and George are very similar. So George accidentally lifting the silver net would have happened. But in that case, I think then two of them would have been affected by the bone glass, which I think would have been worse. Because then both of them are egging on each other, which Lucy already is, but she didn't even see it. She's just genuinely curious.
Yeah, she's just curious.
Yeah. So I think it wouldn't have affected Lockwood that much. I'd like to say that, but I honestly don't know. I think the bone glass is very mysterious. This mirror is very mysterious. So Lucy, like you said, I think she would have been overly sensitive to it. So she would have been a bit obsessed with it, similar to how she was, in my theory, kind of possessed by Annabelle Ward's ghost in her curiosity for it. I think that would have happened, but I think not much would have changed in the trajectory of the story, because George still would have been the person with Joplin looking under the silver net for the inscription. That still would have happened.
Let us know if you agree with our response to that question.
There's a couple of other what if questions we could question, like, what if the silver net hadn't slipped and there wasn't the drama of George and Joplin almost dying? What would have happened? Do you think George wouldn't have been as driven by the bone glass? Also, this is my other theory, but do you think that Joplin probably saw the bit of the mirror in this moment?
Oh, 100%.
Is that what changed his trajectory in this novel to becoming sorry, spoiler alert, the bad person in this novel? Or was he already just a questionable person, which I think he already was a questionable person in general?
Okay, I do have questions. I do think Joplin would have been interested. I think he's a super shady guy. He's super curious, just like George. I think he did catch a glimpse of the bone glass and does end up being influenced by it and Bickerstaff's ghost, because he has that thirst for knowledge and then is influenced. My question is, when Lucy saw the bit of the bone glass, she was kind of entranced by it and heard what I'm assuming to be Bickerstaff saying, here's your heart desires, look at the glass, look at me. Do we think that Joplin also heard that? Like, obviously, he's not as sensitive, but he does end up being influenced by Bickerstaff. So how does that work?
See, I don't think so. I think those voices are like a death loop of what the spirits in the bone glass heard when they all were dying. Because that's got to be what Bickerstaff was saying to his patients when he was showing them the bone glass of, look, I'll give you your heart's desire. And then they, died. They went crazy. Mm-hmm. So I feel like it's like a death loop of what Bickerstaff was always saying.
Okay. So do we think that Joplin heard that?
I don't think he did, because he doesn't have any listening talents.
That's why I'm so intrigued. But people can be influenced by spirits. Like, adults can be influenced by ghosts to do stuff and get lured in by them. But it's so hard to tell what.
That unheard urge to turn and look at something?
Yeah.
That feeling. You don't hear anything, but you just get that feeling.
Sense it.
I think Joplin feels that sense, though, because similar to how adults not formally psychically sense that ghosts are there, but they kind of know when there's bad vibes somewhere. So I feel like similarly, Joplin feels that urge to turn and look, but I don't think he hears voices, and I think Lucy's just hearing a death loop from all the patients that had died that Bickerstaff had killed. That's a spoiler alert for this novel, but, that's my theory. That's my theory with it.
I'm intrigued by that, yeah. I'll have to keep listening to see if she hears any other voices when she's exposed to it.
All right, now the favorite moment guessing game. I have yours. Hold on. I feel like I know it. I feel like yours is probably when Lucy is describing the buzzing and how it feels, and that whole moment when they're opening the grave. That's your favorite moment, because I feel like Stroud does a really great job writing in that section, but also you feel what's going on and it's really creepy. So I feel like that's yours.
Yeah, it is.
I got it right!
You got it.
Celebrate
half page
good
of-
times. Come on.
I'm gonna kill my yellow highlighter on that bit. But yeah, that was totally it. It's just such vivid writing. You can feel it. You can sense it. I've definitely jumped into a cold pool, so I know exactly what that feels like. Ugh. You just really picks you off your couch and puts you in the scene. Chef's kiss.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
All right. Is yours... At first, I thought it was gonna be George joking about the will, but I don't think that's it. I think it's the part where Lockwood and Lucy are talking about how good her throw was.
Yes, it is.
Is it? Okay.
Oh my gosh.
I wasn't sure.
We both got it right this week. Look at us go.
That one made me nervous.
I'm nervous every week with you, Alex.
You're always good. You always get it most of the time.
I don't. You always get it.
I miss
You
a
always
lot.
get it.
But yeah, these chapters were so good. I'm very glad that we split it up, this part 2, because there's a lot of juicy bits.
Me too. I think it makes sense to split it up a little bit more. But I always am curious. There's some novels that make sense how they split up their chapters. I just want to know their thought process for some authors. And specifically this novel, I want to know what the thought process was. Why weren't more chapters involved in part 1? But, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, because part 1 was such a small case. I would have thought that part 2 would have been meeting the client, doing the case, going home afterwards. But that's what part 1 was. And then we just had like a couple of interim chapters that were like how they grew in those 7 months that really kind of felt out of place with the rest of the chapters. Hence why we split it up, because it was a lot of knowledge that was thrown at us.
Yeah, next part is part 3, The Missing Mirror, and it's going to be chapters 9 through 14. So, a hefty bit, but it'll be good. I'm excited.
I did skim a little into the future.
Alex, you're reading ahead. We discussed this. You're not...
I was just looking for more Skull tidbits because I was wondering at what point it comes back and talks to him.
It's okay. When we get to book 3, Skull comes alive. Metaphorically.
Oh, God. Book 3 and book 4, Skull is just out there. I wish Skull was alive. I wish.
It's so funny. I have a little skull that I created, and it sits on my bedside now, so that when I'm up late at night and it's too late, it's staring at me, and I can feel the judgment of, really? You're staying up late and reading? You need to go to bed. You know? It's very helpful.
That Skull would be telling you that you look rough.
I brought it into work over Halloween, and I set it up, and it was staring at my other skeleton I have at my desk that has the whole body, named Leonardo, and I had them staring at each other, and they had to stare down, and it was... It's so funny, because in my head, I'm just hearing this skull, like, be like, really? This is who you're leaving at your desk? You're cheating on me during the day, you know?
Yeah.
This is the one that you want to have? Like, who's this Leonardo?
Is it because he has a body?
Yeah.
Like, what?
Leonardo's just sitting there like, well, I'm the favorite. What are you going to do about that, Skull? You're trapped in a jar. And Skull's like, but I have lights.
You know he would be excited to show off his jar to other skeletons.
He was like, trying to use his laser eyes to take down the other skeleton. It's hilarious. So that's the end of our episode. So be sure to check us out on the social medias. We are on Instagram and Twitter at TwoBestiesRead. You can also email us at twobestiesread@gmail.com, as we usually say in our closer. But feel free to message us your answers to the what if questions, what your favorite moment was. Do you think Lockwood is a little too hard on George? Would you also look at the bone glass? Do you also think Joplin has a dandrift problem? Would you also give him head and shoulders? We really need to know.
Yeah. These are the burning questions we have.
I'm really curious what people think about the medical care for children in this world. I want to know your thoughts. Please.
Yeah, for real. Would there be a support group? Do you say that things are going south when they're going bad? What do you use?
What do you say? What other A words are you going to use to describe Alex that are positive?
Yes, and Addi. We can add an angelic. Throw that in there for her.
Oh my goodness.
Hey, Addi.
Oh, hey, Alex.
Thanks for being my bestie.
Thanks for being my bestie.
Yeah, we had a lot of Harry Potter.
We did have a lot of Harry Potter.
I'll email you that. I'll email you. Thanks for listening to TBR.
Be sure to follow us on the socials at TwoBestiesRead.
Got any suggestions for the other series we should look at? Email us at twobestiesread@gmail.com.
Join us next week as we read